Hey there, Midlife by Design fans. It's Stephanie Shaw from Hello Hot Flash, the podcast that brings you leading doctors, educators, and health pros to answer your questions and guide you through menopause with knowledge and confidence. Be sure to check out episode 223 of Hello Hot Flash, How to Heal Your Body Naturally. You're listening to Midlife by Design. Here is your amazing host, Lori Lisai.
Welcome back to Midlife by Human Design. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, and I help midlife women learn how to use your human design so you can shed the shoulds and be who you came here to be. This episode is so juicy. I am so excited to break down the story of Elphaba and Glinda in Wicked and what it means for us as midlife women. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, beauties. This episode has literally been decades in the making. I am so excited to record it, and I didn't even really realize that it was going to happen until a couple of hours ago when I went for a run this morning and I was like, okay, this is what the pod needs to be about. So I went to see Wicked for Good, the second part of the Wicked series this weekend. And if you haven't seen it yet, highly recommend that you go see it. And I'm going to try to avoid giving away specific spoilers in this episode, but I will say that you should know the general story. You know, I am coming from a background of having read the book back when it was released. I think it was published in 95, and I read it a couple of years after, and then got so excited for the musical. Didn't see the musical until like 10 years later, which is a whole different story, but the musical just absolutely left me flabbergasted and in love and obsessed in all the best ways. And I was so excited when the movie came out last year, loved the first part, and then finally brought it to a conclusion after going to see it this weekend with my mom. So I think that there are so many amazing themes to pull out of this story, and it resonates so deeply with everybody because these themes are universal. And it's why I wanted to record this podcast for us, because I think that as midlife women, especially, that the themes that are apparent in this movie are just queued up for us as role models for us to see firsthand. How do you be your authentic self? This is a film, it's a story, it's a book about two women who are deconditioning from roles that have been assigned to them. And they're choosing authenticity. Both of them choose authenticity when it comes down to it. So, what I'm going to do is look at this story from the lens of the two characters who are portrayed, Glinda and Elphaba. And again, if you aren't familiar with the story, I would recommend you either reading the book, which is even better than all of them. And actually, side note, it's a great book to read on a vacation or something, because I believe that the writing really invites you to slow down, to be patient. It's a long story. It takes a long time for everything to unfold. And it's so magical in so doing. It really invites you into the pause. So if you haven't already done that, do that. If you haven't seen the musical on stage, this film will make you want to see it. And if nothing else, listen to the music. The original Broadway cast recording is in-fucking-credible. And then the new film and the music that goes along with it. So highly recommend that you have some kind of understanding of the premise of the story, which is looking at what happened in The Wizard of Oz through the viewpoint of the two witches, Glinda and Elphaba specifically. So Glinda is the good girl, right? The good witch, the good, period. The Glinda the Good is her name, right? From The Wizard of Oz. And this character, and Ariana Grande does such an amazing job of showing us the art of this character's development in the film. But she is the poster child for us as good girls, right? Where it's the idealized feminine to the maximum. Be pretty, be likable, don't rock the boat, be what everybody wants you to be. And she really represents everything that we were rewarded for in our 20s and 30s, right? Like checking off those boxes, being agreeable, prioritizing our image over our intuition or what our body is telling us, maintaining harmony, not raising our voices when you want to disagree with somebody, contorting yourself to be liked in some way and forsaking parts of yourself in order to be liked. And Glinda is literally rewarded for fitting in. And she does so much to fit in and to be popular that she loses her sense of self and what is actually important to her, what feels good to her. And as we've talked about on this podcast, so many of us in midlife hit this phase in life when we've built entire identities around checking boxes, around being the good girl, the good mom, the good partner, the good worker, the good daughter, on and on and on. But in human design terms, we know that this is actually living from the not self. And some examples of how it shows up are like using your sacral to should all over yourself, doing things that you feel like you should do because you have the energy, but it's not necessarily what is lighting you up, what feels exciting. It's you not shining where you are meant to. Think about the undefined throat, taking on others' voices. Glinda does this. She takes on others' voices without really knowing her own voice or what's true for her because she wants so badly to feel special, to feel magical, to feel like she matters. Think about the root pressure of fitting in and keeping up with appearances that comes with this checkbox lifestyle, these choices that we make. Think about an open or undefined G center where you're trying to become the perfect person, take on the perfect identity. And Glinda, there's not a hair out of place on this girl's head. And of course, looking at the heart center and trying to prove your worth when we should know that as human beings here, living and breathing, that is what delivers our worth. So Glinda is peak good girl programming. Her whole arc in this film is about her unlearning that and dissecting who she actually is and what she comes to believe is true for her. Now, the other side of the coin, or even a mirror of that, is the other character, Elphaba, who is our truth teller. And Elphaba is this woman who never fit. And it was because obviously she had green skin, so that made her weird already. But she was also the girl who followed her inner knowing, who believed in justice, who believed that it wasn't worth being nice in order to let things that were wrong continue to happen. She wasn't willing to play nice for the sake of letting the status quo carry on. And the fact that she was green and an outcast from the very beginning probably gave her some power to do this. It's like, well, nobody likes me anyway. I might as well stand up for what I believe in. She is encouraged, though, throughout her life to make herself smaller, to hide that greenness, to not shine her light or her powers. She's taught to be ashamed of who she is and to suppress what those beautiful gifts are. And listen, I thought about how could I possibly run charts for Glinda and Elphaba? And I'm sure some of you HD nerds out there have done this already. But I was like, when were they born? Were they born when the original Wizard of Oz was written? Or were they born when Gregory Maguire wrote the story? And if so, when would that be? So on and on I went. Here is the power of my undefined head coming into play, where all of those ideas that, quote, don't matter, I am thinking about. But I decided not to try to run a chart and instead just looked at the characters and thought about, okay, what are the ways that they're acting and what do I see? What elements of human design do I see playing out in them? And I mentioned for Glinda, a sacral that is shining where it's not meant to, an undefined throat who isn't actually using her voice for good, hot, punny, root pressure, trying to fit in, open G, trying to become somebody else who she's really not, or trying to be perfect, open heart, trying to prove her worth. Whereas Elphaba, she's got to have the channel of power. This woman is so, so powerful. The 3457, which connects the sacral to the spleen, I think she's got to have that channel because her power is intuitive, as well as definitely coming from the sacral. I also think she has the channel of structuring. That's the 2343, which connects the throat to the ajna, or the mind, which would tell us she's got these wild ideas that seem crazy to others until one day they don't. And Glinda is able to help people see that, but Elphaba has those beliefs, those thoughts, those strong convictions already and shares them. She's got to have a defined heart, because there is an inner worthiness, even when she is being shamed, even when she is being told to be small. It takes her a bit, though, to come into that and to accept those pieces of herself, to accept her power. And in No Good Deed, which is an amazing number in the movie, I think there's a bit of her coming to grips with that. Like, I've got this power and whatever, nothing good ever comes of it, so I might as well just be wicked. And I think she also has a defined G center because she for sure knows who she is. And it isn't until this whole thing happens with the wizard that she actually comes into her own. But I do believe that that center is defined for her. And I also think she's got the root center defined, giving her pressure. Specifically, I think it's going to the spleen because her intuition is just so on point. So she has a lot of definition, and she is literally too much for the system. Like, people want her to be small. They're continually telling her, you can't, this is too powerful. And I think that midlife is reflected there in Elphaba's willingness to step into that power. This is when so much of that Elphaba, wild woman energy awakens in us, or at least that has the potential. It's the moment when we agree to stop shrinking, when we finally start just sharing how we feel. It's when we stop censoring what's coming out of our mouths. Say thank you to the dips in estrogen and our hormones that have totally demolished the filter that holds back those words, but we're no longer smoothing those edges for other people, especially when it comes to sharing what is on our hearts and in our minds and in our beings. We start to listen to our inner authority instead of making quick decisions. For example, when we're an emotional authority, we learn through human design, through life experience that, oh shit, actually I'm designed to take my time with decisions. We start to follow our design. We start to look at what our human design teaches us about the energy that we came here to be. And we look for conditioning and where we're getting into our not self, and then we correct it. Or at least that's what I hope for us. And I think that Elphaba is such a beautiful role model and a character that can awaken that in us as well. I think that she mirrors the part of us that's ready to break the mold, even when it costs us approval from people who are important to us. She is the path of radical self-trust. So I want us to think about the roles of Glinda and Elfie and how they represent paths in midlife. Elfie and Glinda are like mirrors to one another, truly. They have so much in common. They both crave purpose. They both want to matter in this lifetime. And that is such a human experience. I want to know that I am leaving behind something tangible, something lasting, something that makes a difference in others' lives. They both want to do good. It's just they do it differently, but in the end, they both do want to do good, and good in the sense of what is truly beneficial for other humans, as opposed to good as in doing what is expected. Interesting that that word has those two very distinct, different meanings. Both Elphaba and Glinda care deeply. They care about Oz. They care about one another. They do care deeply. So I think that in midlife, we get to this point where we are so done with Glindaing and we are ready to express all of our inner Elphabas while simultaneously being so terrified of that. For Glinda, I think what catalyzes her break from conditioning, because eventually she does break from conditioning, it's watching Elphaba choose her truth over and over and over again. And for Elphaba, for her, it's recognizing the depth of systemic corruption, which is happening throughout Oz, and understanding how far and deeply it goes. And then realizing that her gifts are being exploited and she's not being recognized for what she brings to the table, which is a projector kind of feeling, right? Although I don't think she's a projector. Okay, so that's how they had their breakthroughs. I want you to stop and think about your deconditioning breakthrough. And let's just call it your defying gravity moment, because this is truly where you have to step out from who you've always been, from the good girl, from the check marks, from the yeses, from the shooting all over yourself. This is the moment when you stop waiting for permission. You stop asking, am I supposed to do this? Is this allowed? Can I do this? This is when you stop doing what's expected. Like, what if you brought a ham sandwich to Thanksgiving? Maybe you love ham sandwiches and you fucking hate turkey, but you're going to go sit down and shove turkey down your throat again for the 47th time because that's what is expected. But really what you want is a ham damn sandwich. Well, I tell you, sister, let's channel some inner Elfie and bring the ham sandwich, okay? Also start listening to your authority. Oh my gosh, I say this on repeat on this podcast and it will never get old because ultimately your body will show you the way, but you have to tune into it. You have to make those pauses. I love the time that Elphaba spends out in the woods because that gives her that opportunity to tune in, right? You can choose to go off script. Let's just keep pouring on the film terminology, right? Where can you go off script? What are people expecting from you this holiday season? And how can you bust that up? How can you get curious about what actually is true and right for me? What do I deeply desire to do? How can I do the holiday differently this year according to who I truly feel I am, as opposed to what's expected, what I've always been doing? So there's a difference in how the two characters break out of their conditioning. They're two very different characters. Glinda's wake-up call happens more through grief and loss and witnessing Elphaba's journey and eventually understanding some things about herself and her own path. I'm trying to think about how I can say these things without spoiling it. So yeah, she's able to reflect on her own path. And in the end, her choice to be Glinda the Good is such a different choice than the character that she was much earlier in this story. She is truly choosing to embody goodness. And the goodness is about helping and caring for others and for herself. She's not forsaking herself for others. Her journey, though, her awakening is a bit more quiet. It's a bit more behind the scenes than Elfie's is. And it's even a bit lonely, I would say. But it's peaceful and it's right. Elphaba, on the other hand, she breaks out by having very clear boundaries, very strong sense of self-trust. This character embodies sovereignty in a way that very few characters written have ever embodied. She is the sovereign woman to a T. And she embraces the unknown, which is really fucking scary, right? That is something that our nervous system fights against almost to the death. She trusts her own authority over everybody else's expectations, everybody else's conditioning. She trusts herself. And what I want you to understand is that when you embrace your own inner wild woman, the payoff is that sovereignty. So I want to talk just briefly about frequency because I've been reflecting on pieces of art, pieces of culture that sit with me for a long time, especially films and musicals and that kind of thing. And I really think it has to do with frequency. Remember that everything has a frequency. And when we witness something that we can't stop thinking about, or we experience something that we can't stop thinking about, it's like, this is the 4130 talking a little bit in my design, but it's like this deep feeling of recognition of like, this is a frequency that is part of who I am at my core. And I keep thinking about it because I want this to be a part of my life on the daily because I feel it so deeply. We are craving as midlife women, especially with society telling us that we're getting old and we're irrelevant and we don't matter anymore because we're getting wrinkly and we're getting loudmouth and all the things. We want to believe that we still matter. We want to believe that our lives have meaning, that we are building not only a beautiful life for ourselves, but a legacy that will last beyond our own personal years, that we are somehow changing the world in a positive way. And that frequency is what we feel when we are witness to these types of events. Watching a film that resonates. Resonate. Think about the word resonate. When something resonates with you, it's like it strikes a chord, right? Like think of your heart like guitar strings, right? They're called heartstrings for a reason because you pluck them and they resonate and they emit a frequency. And when you notice that frequency elsewhere, it sings within you. So how can you see this film as a call to becoming your true self? How can you see this time of life as the time when you finally become the person that you were before the world told you who not to be or who to be? How can you become the person that just embodies her truth? Whatever that means for you. So, as I mentioned, Wicked has two pathways into that transformation. You've got the Glinda path, where, it's more through grief. It's a gradual kind of like flower opening slowly. It's gentle, but very profound. And then we have the Elphaba path, where it can be more sudden and more radical. Maybe something major happens in your life in midlife that just wakes you right up and you change because you become this bold version of yourself and you start rejecting the oppression around you and the conditioning around you. Maybe it's going through a divorce or a health crisis or burnout or empty nest or some kind of loss. Those types of things can be the catalyst for this path. I think that it's really about integrating both, because even if you have the more intense path of Elphaba with this radical change, there's still a grieving that will happen because you're letting go of a version of you that no longer fits. So you need Glinda's heart. You need her sweetness for yourself. You need to hold yourself with sweetness. And you also need Elphaba's courage. You need her willingness to walk a path that is not easy. So a few things that I think that Wicked teaches midlife women about deconditioning. One, somebody's always going to call you wicked when you stop complying. When you stop being the good girl, you're going to be called out for it. This is the price of choosing yourself, and pay it happily. Pay it happily. The world is going to reward you for playing small, right? And if you choose to play small your entire life, then that is at the cost of your truth, your sovereignty, your inner knowing. So where do you want to play big in your life? And how can you take a step toward that? How can you take even a tiny, tiny little step toward that today? Number 3, Becoming yourself requires shedding the myth of being, quote, good. Let's think about the definition of good as I've talked about it in this episode. Good, where you're being good according to everybody else's expectations, or good that you are being good as a true representation of yourself and therefore modeling that for others and therefore helping others. Midlife women spent decades trying to be Glinda, and then one day it just stops working. Thank you, hormone craziness. Number 4, your inner authority. We're going to use a metaphor here again. I want you to think of it as your broomstick. This is what helps you rise. This is how you defy gravity, is by using your inner authority. I want you to listen to Defying Gravity, which is part of movie 1, by the way, not movie 2. I want you to listen to that and remember that it is an internal decision. Number 5, you cannot awaken without something falling apart. Whether that be friendships, whether that be your identity, whether that be careers, whether that be your family, whether that be where you live, whatever it is, something is going to fall away. And reframing this as growth instead of loss is the key to understanding how helpful those changes are in your midlife. Remembering that they are happening for a reason. They are happening on purpose. And you get to be here in this lifetime, in this phase of life, revealing your truth. So, as I wrap up here, I want to know, are you ready to be wicked? Are you ready to be the uncontrolled version of you? Are you ready to be the uncompromising version of you? Are you ready to be the unconditioned, really deconditioned version of yourself? Are you ready to be sovereign? This story of Glinda and Elphaba is all about sovereignty. And that is the gift of midlife. It is freedom, finally, from the script. So if this story, if this episode resonated with you, then I want to invite you to get onto my email list, because after years and years of people listening to me talk about human design, and them telling me directly, I'd love to learn more about that, it finally hit me like a literal ton of bricks that I probably should be teaching more. And geez, you would think maybe I had been a teacher for like a couple of decades. I don't know. And that these types of things would maybe be obvious. But sometimes what is most obvious isn't necessarily what we see. So I am super excited. This is the first time I am saying this out loud for the public, but I am super excited to announce that I will be teaching human design, and I will be teaching it specifically through the lens of midlife. I don't have a name for this offer yet. It is still percolating. What I will tell you is that I'm going to teach it live, meaning I am offering it online. So if you are not living near me, you can still access it. But I am teaching it where we will be in person on Zoom. That's like a fucking oxymoron, and I realize that. But the point is that there's so much teaching out there that's available that's just like watching videos, which have a place. 100%. But for me, part of the beauty of learning is learning in community and being able to talk to one another about your experiences. And how does this actually look? If you have a defined mind, for example, how does that play out in your life? Or if you have an undefined G, like Glinda and like me, what does that look like? How do you find a sense of self when you come to midlife? So those are just some examples, but I will be teaching it live and in cohorts. And I will also be teaching it in levels. So you can choose to go from beginning all the way through, or you can choose to stop partway. If you feel like you've got the basics and that's good for you, then fantastic. So this offer is going live during the week of Black Friday, which this episode is dropping on Monday. Thanksgiving is on Thursday, and I will be dropping a special offer this week. So if you want access to that, get yourself on my email list, because that is where I will be dropping it first. You'll get first dibs to be in the first cohort, and you'll also get founding member pricing, which will be primo, because I'm going to give you a treat for Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, all the things. If I think that this is where your deconditioning is going to become doable, because you're going to do it in community with other people, with the support of other people, and I am so fucking excited to get started on this. So without further ado, here's to creating your midlife by your design. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Midlife by Human Design. Remember to get on my email list to get Black Friday deals on my new offer to learn human design. And I also have some other surprises. So hop on the email list. The link is in the show notes. And my outro always includes this wish for you, and it just makes my heart so warm to think about how beautifully it aligns with the message of this episode and with the movie and the book and all of the themes of Wicked. So I am wishing you the strength to let go of what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and the clarity to be who you came here to be.